Well, hey guys, welcome back. We're messing with the little Firenza again. You may have heard me say in the previous episodes, go back and check those out if you hadn't already, that the seller, or the guy advertising it, said that had a 410 rear end gear and a spool. And people are generally honest, but sometimes they get stuff wrong. It's definitely locked, no doubt about that. And it does feel like it's got a little pretty tall gear, or pretty high numerical gear in it, to where it'll kind of go when you step on the loud pedal. So I thought, maybe, but we don't want to think, we want to know. So we're going to get underneath this thing and see what's going on. And while we're at it, I'll show you how you can kind of get an idea of what gear issue you have without taking anything apart. Just picking it up off the ground and turning the wheel around and counting the pinion turns. That's a pretty simple way to get in the ballpark and get an idea of what you have without breaking stuff down and getting gear grease all over the floor. But the other thing is, how did they lock that together? We'll talk about this in detail. I heard spool and I thought, really? It's a 7.5-inch differential. I don't know if I bought that or not, but I educated myself, and they actually make a spool for these little axles. So well, maybe. Everything else the guy had told me turned out to be true for the most part. There's a lot of kind of sketchy stuff on here, but there wasn't any outright lies about it has this and it doesn't. But I said, people get stuff wrong. Maybe they thought that's what it had when they bought it, and wasn't trying to pull my leg. Why would you make up a story about one aspect of the car and not the other? I mean, you'd go whole hog and tell them, hey, this has got 9,000 horsepower and it's made out of, diamonds or something. It just doesn't make any sense to kind of sort of halfway tell a story about it. But like I said, we're going to find out. So stick with us here. Let's check it out. All right, we are under the Starfire Firenza. There's the little 7.5-inch GM corporate differential that came in these things. It's going to do what we need. Our goal here today is to figure out what's going on, what's that actual gear ratio, and how is it actually put to the ground? I can tell you, get around here. These wheels are mechanically locked together. Try to get it both in the shot here. When I move one, the other one moves the same amount in the same direction. And if this was an open differential, which I know it's not, the other one wouldn't move at all, or it would move in the opposite direction, because that's how a differential works. Plenty of information on the web if you're curious about that and don't already know. But this is locked together. Now, I seriously doubt, with the way this is moving instantly, that it is a limited slip type differential where you've got gears or clutches controlling the motion between two. It is fused together to where the two axle halves that are connected in the middle are fused together in some way. Like I may have talked about earlier, the right way, and the way that this is supposed to have been done, according to the seller, is that it was done with a spool, where it's basically a part that looks like a spool. That's kind of like a nickname. And it's connecting those two halves together and eliminating all the differential gears, the side gears and the spider gears. The redneck way, which I have done on more than one occasion for demolition derby cars, is to take that cover off, clean it up the best you can, and weld them together. And you've pretty much got a hillbilly spool there, and it's completely locked. And that's great in a muddy exhibition field for a demolition derby car, or even on pavement or something, because you don't really care. But if you weld it up right, it's pretty strong. If you weld it up wrong, something breaks loose. It jams in there and fails in a most spectacular fashion, and either you or the person responsible for your funeral arrangements has a really interesting story to tell. So we're going to find out what's going on, because if I knew for sure, or, I wouldn't really care. I just deal with the spool on the street till I got something else, but I don't, and I don't want to find out when I'm on I-465 going 80 miles an hour that, I've locked up the rear end. And these are C-clip axles in these cars. There's no kind of retention on them, so the wheel will come right out the end, and that's a bad day for anyone involved. So we're going to do a little bit of an experiment here that you can do with something that is locked together like this is. It doesn't really work as well on a open differential unless you do the following, which is kind of put one wheel on the ground, because the other one will kind of like mess up your numbers here. So what we're going to do is, this is supposed to be a 410. We're going to try to figure out if that's really the case or not. I don't know that it is. It kind of felt pretty peppy to me when I drove it around, but feel means nothing. Let's see if I can get some more light on the actual drive shaft so you can see what I'm talking about. Because we're gonna count the turns here. When you get something that has a that numerical ratio, like 410, 373, whatever, and this car is supposed to have a 308, 3.08. That means that the pinion up front here is going to turn around, whatever that big number is, that many times for one wheel revolution. So if this was a 410, we should expect to see that pinion turn around about 4 times. If this was a 308, we should expect to see it turn around about 3 times. And it's difficult to get, to split it down into hairs. But I mean, if you're trying to tell a 355 from a 373, you might have a hard time figuring that out externally. But if you're trying to tell what we're doing, 308 to 410, it should be pretty obvious. So I don't know if you can see that kind of greasy disc up front there, but that's going to be our reference point, and we're going to count how many times that goes around as I turn the wheel, which you won't be able to see, but I'm going to turn the wheel around one time. The best way to do that is kind of get a reference point like the valve stem and kind of put it at 12, 6, 9, 3, whatever, and turn it around and watch it and see what happens. Again, this doesn't work on an open differential unless you kind of lock one of the other wheels and put it on the ground, but we're going to start turning it around here. So I'm rotating, you can see it moving. Got about a quarter turn, half turn, 3/4 turn, about 1. Two. Okay, now I got 1 full revolution of the wheel of the tire. I know you can't see. You gotta trust me on that. And we turned the pinion around about 3 times. So that kind of goes along with what this car came with from the factory, which is a 308. So I'm going to say that that's what we're going to find when we take this rear cover off. Let's see. All right, here's a pretty good tip that I learned back when I was a teenager. Don't take all the bolts out. When you're trying to drain one of these things, that's the temptation, is to just go at it, rip them all out, pull the cover off. Well, you got an avalanche of some really nasty, stinky stuff in there, aka gear oil. I don't care what brand it is, it doesn't smell good. And even if you, for some reason, think it does, it makes a mess. It sticks all over everything like pancake syrup, and you can't get it off the floor. And why bother with that if you don't have to? So what I've done here, as you can see, I've taken almost all the bolts out, except for the ones at the very top. There's 3 up in there. And actually that kind of worked out because they're kind of hard to get to because of the panhard bar going across here from left to right. So those are just loose, because the idea that I'm trying to realize here is that we're going to use those as kind of a pivot. And you can already see it's kind of dripping into the pan here. But we're going to get a paint scraper or similar tool and a saw face mallet of some sort, and kind of wedge it underneath the bottom and just kind of start prying it away. And you will be amazed at the avalanche of goo that comes out of here. And it's just something you gotta have a little bit of patience with, unless you just want to make a mess. Let it drip down into the pan. Go play with your phone, or whatever you do in your downtime, and let gravity do its work for you, and come back, take the rest of the bolts off. It'll drain a little bit more, and then you don't have so much cleanup. All right, well, this is what's staring me in the face when I took the cover off here. Don't really know what the W20 is. Doesn't line up with any code that I could find, but don't really care. What I did see is kind of what I expected, but didn't want to see. Turn this around here. Remember when I was talking about the redneck locker? Redneck spool, I guess you want to call it. Well, that's what it looks like. You can see all that goo in there. That's probably, who knows? I mean, some kind of welder in there, probably stick welder or something that could reach in that far. They've welded the side gears, which are the ones obviously left and right that are on the axles, and the spider gears, which are the ones that are going top to bottom, that are on this shaft right here in the middle. They've welded them together. So essentially what that does, you can see when I turn the wheel, it just all goes around together. So, does it work? Sure. I've done it many times, but would I trust it on the street? I wouldn't. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me in the comments, and that's fine. Definitely put them in there. I'd like to hear, but I do know that they have broken before, even when we got them squeaky clean, because these things are just greasy, as can be with all that in there. Squeaky cleaned and burned them in as good as we could, and they'll still break sometimes. I mean, because it's not fitted up like like you're welding 2 pieces together. There's a gap in there, and it just it works sorta. But breaking it in a demolition derby and breaking it on the highway is 2 different things, because as you can see in here, there's not a lot of room. A piece of this weld breaks off and gets wedged in one of these ring gear teeth or something and locks your rear end up. I mean, you break an axle. I mean, there's all kinds of catastrophic stuff, and again, you're always going to get people say, well, I've never had a problem. Well, just because it works don't mean it's right. That's learned from an old mentor of mine that stuck with me for a long time. It's kind of the opposite of, if it works, is it stupid? And it's the opposite of that, because, lots of people get killed from doing things like that. I don't necessarily want to go out that way, but I may still drive it like that. We got a decision to make. But that's step one here. We found out how they're locking the wheels together. The other thing is, well, what was that gear ratio? Well, like I said, that W20, and I think there's a mark like that on the pinion gear. You can see it way back in there. I think it's the same thing. So maybe that was just some guy's parts bin or something so he could keep them together. I don't know. But what is better than that, if I can turn it around here, this might take a second for me to find it, because I did find this off camera. If you're lucky, these will be marked. I'll have to turn this around to find it here. Yeah, there it is. There it is. This is probably going to be really hard to see. Drop my camera in the oil here. Get some light on it if we can, maybe. Help the situation a little. Or not. Bear with me here. Yeah, there's a marking on that. Whether you can see that or not, I think you can. This is 13-40. So what, right? Well, if you divide 40 by 13, that works out to 3.076, on and on, which is essentially 3.08. What those 13 and 40 mean are, this big gear has 40 teeth. That little gear back in there, the pinion gear, down in the hole here, you can see the end of it there. That's got 13. So that's where you're getting that multiplication factor and our gear ratio. So it is a 308, which is what we kind of figured out from counting the turns earlier on here. But I wanted to prove it, and also wanted to see what was going on, how they lock these axles together. But, well, what do you do if there's no markings on there, or you can't find them, or they're worn off, or whatever? Well, you saw those two numbers. That's all you got to have. So not the easiest thing to do, but I have done it before. Wipe that thing back off in there, put a paint pen or something on the pinion and on the ring gear, or make you some kind of reference point to where you can know where you start and stop, and just count those teeth. You may need to do it a couple times if you lose your place. Pinion gear is probably harder to reach, but easier to count because there's fewer of them. Get that number and divide that into the bigger number, and it's going to work out. You're going to get it. It may not come out to a perfectly round number, but they're going to round it up or down to whatever the advertised ratio is. They go to two decimal places. You got 3.73, 3.55, 4.11, 4.56, whatever the case may be, and you can figure it out. So if you got them, got the cover off and you can see it, you can tell for sure there. If you don't, you can spin the wheel around like I showed you and get pretty darn close, or at least get in the ballpark of what it might have. The more time you put into it, the more accurate you can get with the kind of wheel turning and pinion rotation counting method. But that's how you do it. So I guess we solved the mystery here, and I got a decision to make. Well, that didn't turn out exactly like I expected, but that's okay. I would rather know than not know. I'm fine with the 308. Actually, that makes it a lot more drivable. This has got a 700R4 in it. That 308 gear, kind of a turd with, the manual transmission that it had. It's like a 255 or something first gear, and this has a 325 or something first gear. So that's probably why it feels pretty peppy, because you got like a 20% or whatever that works out. I was told there's no math, but you got a little bit better mechanical advantage taken off there because of that lower first gear, and then you got overdrive. So you kind of get the advantage of that too. So really probably run an even taller gear in the back with that overdrive and get away with it and not be horrible on the interstate. I mean, a carbureted 4-barrel 350 Chevy is not gonna break any records for any economy runs or anything, but at least it's something I can afford to drive with fuel prices the way they are and not kill me, and it won't be screaming up in overdrive where it's turning some high RPM and just blowing your eardrums out of your head because the thing's droning on. So I'm not unhappy. I kind of wish that the rear axle wasn't welded together like that, but we'll figure it out. We got more work to do, so definitely stay tuned. Once again, thanks for watching, and remember to do your homework. Like, subscribe, share, comment. All that stuff's good. It lets me know what you guys are interested in. Like I said before, I'm going to keep doing it anyway. So we'll see you next time on the next episode of Smith Motor Works. Later.